Hello, everybody. I hope you're well and good evening. Good to see you. So today what we're going to be talking about is warming up and cooling down. So this is something, and what we're trying to do with any of these contents, any of these lives, is to give as much helpful content as we can for you guys. So what we're looking at here is the topic of warming up and cooling down. Now, this is something I see discussed a lot. Should we be warming up? Should we be cooling down? How should we be doing it? When should we be doing it? Well, what I want to be doing during this talk is to really have a discussion around this. I'm going to make things as usual, as interactive as possible. I'm going to get you guys doing some things. But what would be great is to get your views and your comments. So if you have comments as we go through, please do share them with us, because, as I say, it's very much a sort of discussion point that I want us to be having, and to be getting your views as a group. What do you find works? Do you like warming up? Do you like cooling down? So if you're watching at the moment, let's start by getting nice and interactive. I'm very intrigued to see what you guys do. So if you warm up before a run, drop a W into the comments for me. If you cool down, pop a C into the comments. And if you warm up and cool down, pop a W and C in there. It'd be really interesting to see. So, be active, be interactive, because that's what we're going to do during this talk. Drop that into the comments, because I'm very interested to see, do we warm up at the moment, guys? Do we cool down, or do we do both, a warm up and cool down? So that's a W for the warm up, a C for the cool down, and a WC for both. So I think now that's given chance for everybody to join our talk. So what we're going to look to be doing is discussing, and Simon, just seen it there, WC, brilliant. So he's warming up and cooling down. Jason coming through there with the W. Thanks, guys. Keep these coming in, because it's really interesting to me. I wonder, Chris coming through with the WC. I'm wondering there, what's more important to people, the warm up or the cool down? So we're going to break this talk up. Thank you, Linda. WC again. So at the moment, guys, I'm seeing lots of W and C. Vanessa coming through with a C there. And what I would say, guys, is that I don't really have a particular preference for either. I like both, and I think both have their merits, which is what we're going to talk about today. So Terry, thank you for your comments as well. So we're going to split it into two. We're going to talk about the warm-up and we're going to talk about the cool-down. But as ever, guys, what I want to do is keep things as simple as I can for you, and really break this down. So if we start by talking about the warm-up, so warming up for running. Now, what we want to think about with either of these things is, what are we looking to achieve by what we're trying to do? So it's exactly the same as when I say that every run should have a purpose. We want to know what we're looking to achieve. We want to make sure we know what we're looking to achieve with a warm-up. So when we're looking to do a warm-up, what we're looking to do is to prepare the body for the competition or the exercise that we're about to put it through. We're looking to make the muscles ready for what they're about to do. So what we have is a concept of warm-ups, which we might know as stretching. Okay, now within stretching, again, there's multiple ways that we can stretch. And put in its most simplest form, we have our two ways of stretching: dynamic and static stretching. So again, if these are new terms to you, I'm going to explain those, or if you're familiar with those, that's great. But what we want to know is, what form of stretching should we be doing, when, why, and how? And we're going to talk about all those things now. So when we're warming up, we're looking to prepare the body for exercise. So we have our dynamic and our static stretching. Dynamic stretching, this is where we're looking to dynamically stretch a muscle, exactly what it says that we're looking to do. So we're looking to take the muscle through the range. Static stretching is when we're looking to hold a muscle in an elongated position with the overall aim of increasing its flexibility. So before we run, when we go out running, are we looking to hold those muscles in an elongated position? No, we're not looking to do that when we run. We're looking to get them moving, get them warming. So therefore, when we are doing a warm-up, what we want to be doing is some dynamic stretching. So now, lots of people I see comment or ask me, do we need to warm up for running? So what I would be saying when it comes to warming up for running, I would never ever argue against a warm up. What I would say though, if you're somebody who doesn't believe they need to warm up for running, I understand that point. If you are a footballer, if you are a rugby player, if you're going into a dynamic sport, I think a warm up is fundamental and a complete priority in terms of injury prevention. The advantage that we have as runners is that we really should be easing into any run that we do. Even our speed work, we don't want to be going straight into speed work. So as a result, we can be using the early parts of our run to act as our warm-up, to be increasing the blood flow and to be preparing the body for the exercise that it's about to undertake. However, having said that, are there added benefits that we can have from a structured warm-up? Yes, there are. So what we're looking to do at this point is to use some of these dynamic stretches to prepare the body for competition. Now, again, what are we looking to do when we're warming up? Well, Are we looking to be using our upper body muscles too much? Perhaps not when we're running. So what we want to focus on, and what I'm going to talk about now, is the key dynamic stretches that we can be doing to prepare our body for running, and in particular, our legs. So just looking here for a comment from Jason, used a static stretch before going for a run, quickly found that early in the run I was getting niggles, so I changed to a walk as a warm-up instead for a few minutes. So that's a great example there of actually static stretching before a run. In terms of what we're looking to achieve, it's probably not something that we're looking to do because we're going to talk about this later when we use static stretching. But as Jason quite rightly says, by easing into his run with a few minutes walk, he's preparing his body much better for what he's about to do. And ultimately, he's found a reduction in his injuries, which is great. So what I want you to do, guys, that's enough of me talking for a second. I want you to be standing up, moving around, and we're going to talk through some dynamic stretches. And what I want to give you is 4 or 5 that you can put in your armory to be using before a run. Okay, so firstly, some of the key muscles that we're looking to work. So be upstanding, and what we're going to look to do is to talk through some of these. So firstly, we might be looking to use our glutes. You know that I talk about these glute muscles a lot, very important, our most powerful muscle group. So it makes sense that we want to prepare these. So this is the one where you might see the typical movement of just bringing our leg across the body. So all I'm looking to do here as I go through is take these muscles through that range to be warming up those glutes. And you notice that what we're looking to do is be slow, controlled, so it's not too quick, not too fast, but we're looking just to be light on our feet. And as I go through, I can start to increase the speed as I'm doing those and increase the intensity as I move towards the warm-up. Now, the muscles that work in the opposing way to our glutes are our groin muscles. So what we can look to do is the opposing movement, which is where we lift up our leg and turn it out, to just be opening up the hip and the groin area a little bit. So we do that corresponding movement as we work through. Good. Just working through. So again, be doing this with me. You might be more than familiar with these exercises, but have a go at them and remember the purpose. So start slow, build the intensity as we work through. Following that, what we can now look to work into are the hamstring muscles. So again, with our hamstrings, what we're looking to do is just drive the leg straight forwards, bring it back down, and then change to the other leg. One important thing to note, try to keep that leg straight. If we come up with a bent leg, we're not getting the hamstrings on stretch. So nice and straight, but you notice I'm keeping it nice and slow, nice and low in the early stages. And then what I'll look to do is just build the speed and build the height that I'm going through. Really trying to now encourage a blood supply to the area, loosen through those tissues, ready to go into my run. Now, the opposing muscles to the hamstrings are the quads. Again, we know we use these a lot in running. So what we look to do here is a simple heel flick up. And what you should be feeling there is just a stretch through those quad tissues, keeping it slow at first, and then building up the sharpness of that dynamic stretch as we move through. Good, and then from this position, we can also work our hip flexors. So these are the muscles that bring about this movement. So it makes sense that as runners, we use these a lot and they become tight as a result. So we want to prepare them with some dynamic stretching. So again, what we do is we take them in the opposite direction. So we just look to bring the leg straight back as we go. And then that's just hip extending and therefore stretching through those hip flexors. And you'll notice I just look to do a few. We don't need to spend too long on these, just as long as we know the principles, that we're increasing the intensity as we work through those repetitions. And then we'll just make our way down towards the calf area here. I'm just going to drop the camera a little bit. Now we know, again, these are a real area for runners to become tight in and unfortunately suffer injury as a result of. So we do want to make sure that we're preparing those. One of my favourite ways to do this dynamically is just to stand up against the wall and then just almost lean into the wall. I kind of do press-ups into the wall as I go through, just dynamically taking those calves. So what we're looking to do is drive the knees over the top of the toes. Now, I do this first of all with a straight leg. I then repeat the exact same exercise with a bent leg. And you should feel that to be slightly different. Working the same area, but in a slightly different way, because we have multiple muscles in that complex that we're looking to warm up. And then that takes us through those key muscle groups in that area that we want to be working. And what you should be finding, if you've been doing that, is that you'll notice now a heightened breathing response, a elevated heart rate. We're looking to get ourselves ready to go for a run. So this is something you should be doing right the way before you get going. And then once you get going, you've got the elevated heart rate, you've got an increased breathing response, you're ready to go on the run, and the body is much better prepared, if that makes sense, for what we're about to do. Again, if you have questions about those guys or anything around warming up, drop those into the comments. As I say, we have the advantage as runners that actually we can ease into our runs. And again, one of the biggest points I would make is never go out running too quickly. We know anyway that that's a big mistake as runners if we're in a race. But again, even if we're in one of our training or everyday or even recovery runs, I can't see a need to go out hard and fast. Even for the speed sessions, you want a period of warming up to be prepared for the competition. So that's warming up. So as I say, in a nutshell, the focus really goes on to dynamic stretching and preparing the body for the exercise that it's about to undertake. So then we've got our cool downs. Now, again, this is interesting. What's fantastic, guys, is dropping into the comments. I've seen a lot of C's and things because I find the cool down to be something that actually is missed by a lot of people and can be very helpful, in my opinion, in injury prevention. So again, we're going to keep it simple. What are we looking to achieve when we're doing a cool down? Well, these obviously happen at the end of our run. And here what we're looking to do is return the body to the resting state and help the process of any recovery that might be required to get ourselves back to our resting state. So can we essentially be finishing the run and then returning ourselves to exactly how we were before we started? So in this, we almost want to be doing the opposite. Do we want to finish a run and be doing dynamic stretching? No, because that wouldn't be, that's not the right purpose for what we're looking to achieve. But this is where something like static stretching can come into play. So the difference here being is a static stretch, perhaps the more conventional or old-fashioned way of stretching is to take a muscle into an elongated position and hold it in that position. So what are we looking to achieve here? Well, what we're looking to do is really send a message to the brain, what we call the stretch reflex. By elongating those muscle fibers, we have receptors in our muscle cells that we term mechanoreceptors. And once they're held under this tension, they will ping a message to the brain to say that we need to relax that muscle tissue. So when we finish a run, our muscles, if they began, for argument's sake, this long, they've been used to their maximum and they've shortened as they've gone through the exercise. So they're in a shortened state. They're also in a warm state. So it's a great time to be getting the benefits of static stretching. So what we want to be looking to do is go through a routine where we hold those muscles in a lengthened position for 30 seconds. And what that will do is activate this stretch reflex to the brain to relax those muscle tissues. So what I'm going to be looking to do now is go through the sort of cool down static stretching routine that I go through at the end of the run in the hope that will be helpful, give you guys some pointers. So again, I want you to do that with me. I've just noticed with Terry's comment here, because I think it's a fantastic one. He's put that I love walking after a run to cool down. Now, I completely agree with that. I actually live at the top of quite a steep hill, and I probably just to help myself out, but I use the walk up the hill as my cool down. But I completely agree, because again, we talked about walking at the start of a run to be preparing ourselves for competition. Once we've been running, we now want to be settling that heart rate down. So Terry's quite right. By using that walk, what we're looking to do is gradually take that heart rate back down towards our resting heart rate. So we want to get everything back to the resting state. So fantastic commentary. I really appreciate that, because that is a really good point to make. And that's how we can return the heart rate down to the resting state. And again, doing this gradually is helpful in preventing any future soreness. But what we also want to be doing is returning those muscles to the resting state. And as I mentioned, we do this with static stretching. So again, that's enough for me for talking for a second. We're going to get practical, guys. So follow me with some of these stretches, because I try to keep it in quite a close proximity for the routine, as it makes it nice and simple. So again, I'm just going to look to drop the camera. Now, a lot of the stretches I look to achieve from this position. So from here, I can begin with my hip flexors. So what I would do is work my left hip flexor from this position, just by simply easing into that stretch. Now, what we don't want to do in a cool down stretch is dynamically fly into the stretch, or even worse, is go in and bounce. Okay, we have to remember that these muscles are now in this shortened state. So we want to be slowly taking that into position. And then from there, I slowly tip my chest back to get a nice stretch. And as I said, I'm going to be looking to hold that there for 30 seconds. And this you should be feeling, if you're doing this with me, guys, a stretch right the way through the front here. I mentioned when we were talking about the warm-up how important these hip flexors are, and the fact that they commonly become short and tight in us runners. So that's a stretch that we want to be doing and holding. And then from this position, after 30 seconds, I can nicely go into a right hamstring stretch. And again, the way I do this is I just bring that leg to straight, and then I slowly bring myself forwards. And again, I just look to hold this stretch. So I've gone from doing my left hip flexor and my right hamstring from this very similar position. Then from that position, I can nice and easily go out and do my right groin. So I just take the leg out now to 90 degrees and I just slowly look to ease into that position. And again, you would hold all of these stretches for 30 seconds. But hopefully you're doing this with me, guys, and you're feeling that you're stretching the correct areas as you go through. Because then from that position, I can just repeat onto the other side. So I go into now work my right hip flexor. Again, so I slowly ease into the stretch. And then I slowly take my chest backwards, and then we would be holding that for 30 seconds. And then after 30 seconds, when I come out of that stretch, I can then go into my hamstring stretch. And then I can just look to be taking the leg directly out to the side here at 90 degrees, and I lean forward slowly into that groin stretch. So very simply from this position, I've then covered off my hip flexors, my hamstrings, and my groins. Then after 30 seconds of each of those, I then look just to lie onto my front, and I just simply look to bring both feet up and in towards my bottom. You can do this one at a time, and we look to hold this here. Now, this can be a very difficult stretch to get into that position. If it's difficult, not a problem at all, because a slightly modified or easier version is to go onto your side. From here, you can be looking to bring the leg up, pull the foot into the bottom, and just bring the leg down to straight. And the aim is to get both of those legs to be in a straight line. But you might find that you don't quite have the flexibility to get there, which is fine at the moment. But just when you feel that stretch, just slowly hold it for 30 seconds. What we don't want to do is put too much extra stretch on there and run the risk of any injury. So again, that's how we would then work those quad tissues. And then we can also be working the glutes from this position. And this is probably my favorite stretch after a run, which is to lay onto my back and simply bring my leg up and across my body. So I lift the knee, drop it down across the body. And then what I can do is just pull down with the other hand. And you should be feeling that around that right hip and that right glutes. Now, you may also feel a little click in the back area when you do this stretch, which again is quite normal. We have sort of the joints and the vertebrae there that can become a little bit trapped. Trap some air in there as we run, and then you just feel that air escape as you do that stretch. And then you would repeat that on the other side. And again, we would just look to hold that there, and we go right the way through to 30 seconds. And then finally, from this position, I then come into standing and I finish with the calf stretches, which we may be well aware of, where again, now, what I tend to see with people when they do this stretch is that back foot isn't in the correct position. What we want to do to get a nice stretch is just to keep those toes, at least first of all, in a nice straight line. And we look to just be holding it here for 30 seconds. If you are somebody who suffers with calf issues, calf problems, what you can do is just modify this back heel position. By changing the back heel position, you'll feel each part of your calf being stretched in a slightly deeper way. But again, you want to make sure you're holding each one for 30 seconds. And then, as I mentioned with our dynamic stretching, we want to do a straight leg version and then the bent leg version to get into what we term your soleus muscle, another muscle in that complex that we want to make sure we're stretching out. And then we'd go through that for 30 seconds and then we'd repeat on the other side. So just looking to go through there, hold that one with the toe straight for 30 seconds, heel out for 30 seconds, heel in for 30 seconds, and then a bent leg for 30 seconds. And that takes you through my kind of static cool down routine, if that makes sense. So these are the static stretches that we're looking to do. So here we're looking to return the muscles to the resting state. This won't increase our flexibility. In order to increase our flexibility long term, this is a process that we want to be repeating every day, spending 5 to 10 minutes a day looking to go through that stretching program, because then what you'll be doing is not only returning to the muscles to their resting length, but you'll be increasing their resting length. And that's where we get a increase in our flexibility. So I've just seen a really good question here from Wendy, who's talking about after a run, is it okay to stretch for about a minute or is that too long? That's absolutely fine, Wendy. I mentioned 30 seconds. That really is a sort of minimum to activate this stretch reflex. You know, sometimes, I'm sure we've all done it, particularly after long runs, If we've done further mileage than normal, it's really nice to go into a longer, deep stretch. And that's absolutely fine. As long as we're not bouncing in the stretches, as long as we're just maintaining a nice hold and it's not putting too much excessive strain, then that's absolutely fine and a really good question. My one caveat about stretching, guys, after a run, the only time I would say not to do it is if you have any suspicion of injury. If you think that you've tweaked an injury, typically, then we might instinctively want to go into a stretch. But if we think about what's happened there, if we imagine an elastic band, for example, or our muscle fibers, and we've created a small tear in that muscle when we've got that injury, if we then start elongating that fibers, we run the risk of making that tear increase in its size and becoming slightly more problematic. So if you suspect that you suffered an injury, I wouldn't be doing static stretches around that area. But if you're just feeling generally sort of tight at the end of the run, that's the time to be doing those gentle cool down stretches. So yeah, just having a look at some of these questions as well, guys. How soon after a cool down and you finish, should you be stretching? So again, really good question, one that I'm asked. I think really as soon as possible in order to get the advantages of the muscles being as warm as possible. So what I mean by that is if we imagine they're a bunch of dough, as it were, we know that the warmer that is, the more pliable it's going to be and the more we can get the benefits. If we let the muscles cool down fully, then it's going to be more difficult to get those benefits. So to answer your question, Gemma, I would be thinking really as soon as possible. But again, it was quite rightly mentioned about a walk and things. We can definitely be doing that. Anything that's maintaining the overall warmth of the tissue, but then to get a nice stretch when you finish. So yeah, do you do one of each stretch? Is there a suggested minimum? Well, again, Vanessa, when it comes, great question. I would say the minimum is one of each area. I think if we want to spend more time stretching, that's absolutely fantastic. And I mean, if it is of help, guys, what we do have, if you are looking to improve your flexibility or understand a little bit more about stretching, we do have a free program, which is you can find and sign up to. It's a 4-week program, and it effectively it's me delivering 4 different classes where we stretch each of the muscle groups with different stretches each time, and they progress in their difficulty. It also allows you to test your own flexibility and then track your improvements. So you can find this over at johnwsportsinjury.co.uk /stretching-program. So I'll leave that there and I'll drop that into the comments. So if you do want to improve your overall flexibility, that's a free program. It's a 4-week program that is available to you guys. So, I mean, I've spoken about cool downs and I've spoken about stretching, which is a very important part, but there is more to a cool down than just stretching. Remembering that what we actually want to be doing is returning the body to the resting state. So we're using it as a period of recovery. So there are other things that we might be familiar with to help our recovery. Now, one of those things could be things like ice treatment, for example, and the classic ice bath. So why do people do ice baths? I'm sure you might be familiar with this or even seen this on the TV and things. What we're looking to do here is we're looking to calm any inflammation. So it was formerly thought, we've all probably gone on those runs and felt really, really sore the next day. The sort of phrases of walking around like John Wayne or having to shuffle down the stairs. I'm sure we've all been there. Now, this is a phenomenon, as it were, that we call DOMS, or delayed onset of muscle soreness, which effectively means the next few days we can be sore after a period of intense exercise. Now, it was formerly thought that this was all lactic acid's fault, that we produce lactic acid when we exercise, it puts a lot of acid into our body and it causes all this stiffness. And lactic acid was blamed for everything. Now, lactic acid probably had a little bit of bad press. And what we've actually found is that it's probably not totally or in fact anything to do with lactic acid. What we actually is more commonly believed now is we suffer what we call the micro tear theory, which is where by using these muscles a lot, we've created small tears in the muscle. So why then are we looking to use an ice bath? Well, what we're going to get to those small tears are an inflammatory response. And the inflammatory response is required, but sometimes it can be excessive. So what we look to do is we look to cool the areas to calm down that inflammatory response so we don't suffer these delayed onset of muscle soreness. And Mark's just put a great comment in here, ice baths for the win. I completely agree. So I've seen a lot of you guys building up for things like the virtual marathon. In my opinion, particularly after those long runs, I think you'll find the ice baths to be really helpful. So that's another thing that if you can factor into your cool down, can be very helpful. And again, it doesn't have to be an ice bath. It could just be something like a cold shower. But what we're looking to do is just return the muscles to the resting state by calming them down and preventing any excessive inflammation or soreness as a result of these micro tears. The final thing I wanted to mention, guys, is around the fact of nutrition. So what are we looking to do? What should we be putting into our bodies to help us recover? Well, the main nutrient that we're looking to get in is protein. Protein is really there for growth and repair of damaged muscle tissue. So we'd like both of those things. We'd like our muscles to grow stronger as a result of the run that we've just done, but ultimately we also want them to repair as a result of any damage that's been caused. So it's a really good idea to try and take in more protein into the body following a run. So that's where you might classically get things like the protein shakes, which work very well. But again, even things like chocolate milk is found to be a very good component of protein to carbohydrate. And again, I'm not a nutritionist, so I appreciate people might have other views on this, but chocolate milk can be a very good substitute to help with your protein intake. And again, and also just monitoring what you're eating. And the other thing I would say around cooling down is that you have to remember that the hydrating that you might have been doing during your running shouldn't stop there. You want to be making sure that you are taking in much extra fluids than you would do normally throughout the rest of the day on a day that you've been running, training, and particularly during long runs where you're going to be more dehydrated. So I hope that's been helpful. So I've just seen a comment as well from Mark here. Sorry, brings a few up here. So this couple there coming in for chicken curry as well. So yeah, great source of protein. And let's be honest, and it brings me on to Mark's comment as well about chocolate milkshake. One of the things I love about this is it's my treat. So might be making me a little bit sad there, but when I'm out having a run, I feel that I deserve my treat. So it's one thing that I'm looking forward to is my chocolate protein shake when I get back. So I agree, chicken curry being the same. And Mark's also mentioned another great source of protein is Greek yogurt. So again, having these things, it doesn't have to be these high-tech protein shakes. They're good, they work well, they do exactly what they say on the tin, but we have these things that are readily available to us that are good to take into the body. So I agree with all of those comments. So yeah, if you have any further comments, guys, please feel free to drop those in. Wendy's coming in now saying that she was joking about the chicken curry. So, well, again, chicken's our source of protein, as I can see Mark saying here. And yes, okay, a curry is a food high in fat and things, but I think it's also important to have a balance. And I think if we have worked hard, then that's our treat. That's what keeps us going through some of these longer runs. So don't beat yourself up too much about that one on Wendy. So if you have any further questions, guys, please do feel free to drop them into the comments and I will come back to you. And hopefully that's been helpful. As I say, keeping it nice and simple and in a nutshell, when we're warming up, we're looking to prepare our body for the exercise that we're about to go through. So it's dynamic stretching, it's easing into the sport and exercise and increasing the heart rate slowly to the level that we want to take it to. And then we're doing the complete opposite with the cool down. So what we're looking to do is take that body from the heightened state and return it to our resting state. So that's when we get the static stretching. That's when we get the slowly walking and bringing the pace back down, and we get the correct nutrition to return our body to how it was at the start. So thank you very much for your comments. I've really appreciated you guys jumping in. They've been really, really helpful. I hope that was helpful, and feel free to reach out to me when any comments you have. There's a great one just coming in here for Vanessa, quite rightly saying that tuna is another great source of protein. So if you're sitting there thinking, I don't have protein shakes, I don't have sources of protein, there are things that are in your cupboards that will probably be helpful for you to have. So you can just look to have those as a routine at the end of your runs, and they will be helping with the growth and repair of that damaged tissue. As ever, guys, please feel free to reach out to me. Happy running, and I look forward